Morrison again from my Connect Pal account. What do I do? My own son, Chip Jr., the other day asked me a question. He said, Dad, you know I'm in sales. How do you get people to say yes? Oh, Chipper, salespeople all over the world ask that question every single day. Let me give you both some conscious as well as some unconscious methods to be able to get them to say those three magic words, I want this. So that you get the yes, they get the product, and your bank account gets the deposit. First, let's talk about some conscious ways that you can deal with people. I think really it falls into four distinct areas. The first is, in some cases, you have to talk them into it. The second is, you have to create a sense of urgency. The third is, you have to completely take the opportunity off the table and beg them or have them beg you to buy it back. And the fourth thing is that you have to learn how to sell sizzle, not the whole steak. Let's talk about talking people into making a business decision. These are the analytical people out there, the engineers out there that analyze every single thing about making a business decision and still can't say yes. What you have to do, as I said, is you have to talk them into it. Great technique for this is you want it, don't you? You like it? Why don't you buy it? And those of you who've been in my seminars before know that buy it in that last sentence is a embedded command to get somebody to unconsciously do something that they wouldn't normally do. Years ago, I had a great real estate agent that worked for me by the name of Marty Michelle. And Marty had an analytical doctor that she had shown a house to over on Sycamore Street in our town 3 different times. And he called her up and he said, Marty, I want to see that house on Sycamore one more time. Since Marty had him on a speakerphone, I was able to hear both sides of the conversation, which went something like this. Marty said to him, why? It hadn't changed. Why don't you just buy it? And he did. The second element that we talked about in terms of creating a sense of urgency, I have a great technique that I've used zillions of times, and it really moves people to action. And it goes like this. If this car was not here at 8 o'clock tomorrow morning, would you be disappointed? If they say yes, they're going to buy it. Another great technique that I like to use is completely take that opportunity off the table. This happened the other day with a $100,000 investor that was going in one of our flip deals. And he was procrastinating about getting the money funded so that we could get the transaction closed. What really happened was I put another investor in his place. Do you think next time that investor is going to drag his feet when another opportunity comes his way? Not on your life. And the last thing has to do with we have to learn to sell sizzle. Sizzle is that emotional side of getting people to say yes. In the sales business, we always tell with the head, but we close with the heart. One of the best things that you can do on the emotional side to sell sizzle is to learn how to tell stories. You can go into someone and you can show them all the logical graphs and charts of why you may be the best or why your product is the best. But the reality is, 24 hours from now, they won't remember 3/4 of it. But if you tell them in a story with facts and analogies and comparisons about what you've done for other people, they'll remember that. And remember too, when you're talking about emotion with people, the distance between what they require and need versus what they want and desire is the only distance that you have to close to get them to be able to say yes. And you also have to remember that for them to buy into your solutions, you got to make sure that they're unhappy with their problems. Now let's talk about some unconscious techniques that I think you ought to learn and be aware of. Now, we could spend hours and hours on this, and it would take many hours of what we call practice, drill, and rehearse on your part to be good at it. But let's take something very simple on the unconscious side that you can pay conscious attention to yourself and help lead people to saying yes. And that has to do with understanding whether you're dealing with visual type people, auditory type people, or what we call kinesically oriented people, or people that make decisions based upon gut instinct. About 35% of the people you come in contact with will be visual. They will make decisions based upon how they see something. About 25% of the people you come in contact with are auditory. The message isn't important. What is important to them is how the message sounded to them. And the third has to do with those gut instinct, the kinesically oriented people. And they make up about 40% of the people that you will personally come in contact with in sales. Now, let's go back to the visuals for a moment. What we're looking for here is trigger words that people say when they're communicating to you, because those key trigger words give you insight into how they make personal decisions in their own subconscious mind. When you hear a visual, say things like see, a trigger word like picture, touch, or grab, then there's a pretty good indication that they are visually oriented and make those decisions visually of how that car looks on them, or those clothes look on them, or how this home looks with them living in it. Now, it's important when you hear a visual say, hey, Chip, I don't see it being one of those trigger words in the conversation could give you a real good indication you're dealing with a visually oriented person. You wouldn't want to come back and use another word like, well, how does this grab you? Or how does this sound? Which are techniques that we would use for kinesically and sound-based people. You wouldn't use those with a visual. Regurgitate and use the trigger words they're giving you. That's how you feed it back to them. That's how the message gets through. That's how you bond better with them. That's how you close the deal. Let's talk about the auditories for a moment. Auditory people, again, make decisions by how things sound, not necessarily the message. My wife is an auditory individual. Years ago on Jeopardy, they had a contestant that came from Marietta, Georgia, a suburb of where I live, here in Atlanta. Had the nastiest voice you've ever heard. Twitter blew up the next couple of days because they said this is the worst contestant ever. Who was complaining? You got it. Those auditory people, the sound-based people, couldn't stand the sound of her voice. My wife, being the auditory, always has the radio on when you get in a car. Auditories, too, are those types of individuals that always get up in the morning and turn either the radio or the TV on because they like chatter, they like noise, they like something going on around them. Trigger words for auditories are things like hear, sound, tone. Those are great words. You need to feed it back to them. If they say, I hear what you're saying, but, say, well, how does this sound? Then you have two words based upon how an auditory thinks and processes information that now are in tandem in two sentences that make sense to them. Let's talk about the kinesically oriented individual. These, again, are the people that make decisions by gut instinct. Words like feel, touch, grab are all important because those, again, relate to them. If you have a weak handshake, and unfortunately a lot of women and some men have weak handshakes, guess what? You shake the hand of somebody that makes a decision by gut instinct, to those kinesically oriented people, and you got a wimpy handshake, you have a strike against you. And you didn't even know it. Because that gut instinct, that feel of that poor handshake really worked against you. On the visual side that we talked about a minute ago, if you show up in a dirty car or you're not put together right, you got it. You got another strike against you. The kinesically oriented people really, again, make up a very large percentage of your market. These are the people that really need to know more about you, the emotional side of things, the touchy-feely side, the kind of, I want to push your arm around you and make you feel good. Be sure to use those words like feel, touch, grab in tandem with how they use words when they're responding to you. You try these techniques both on a conscious level and an unconscious level that I've given you today. You practice, drill, and rehearse them, and I guarantee you, Chipper, and I guarantee you, subscribers out there, you'll lead more people to saying yes. Hey, my time's up again today. Look forward to seeing you again real soon.